If you are what you think about, then you have to start getting real careful about what you think about. Now, you have to start this with being cautious about every conversation that you have with your friends, with your relatives, with your mother, with your husband, with your children, that focuses on what's missing in your life. Because if you want to attract something into your life, something good, something grand, something godlike, something prosperous, something of well-being, health, whatever it might be, if you want to attract that into your life, but you're talking about what's missing and thinking about what's missing, and you understand that what you think about is what expands, you will continue to expand more of what's missing, and you'll continue to attract what's missing in your life. I never talk about what's missing in my life. I only put my attention on what I intend to create. And I have shifted it. And I learned this lesson a long time ago, but the place that it probably expresses it better than any is Esther and Jerry Hicks' book, Ask and It Is Given. The teachings of Abraham is called Learning to Manifest Your Desires. Have more than anything, I think they're the greatest, among the really greatest teachings on the planet today. And I know Esther and Jerry, I know them well, I've been with them on many occasions. It's about practicing this idea of not putting your thoughts on what is missing and shifting it to, it's on its way. It's on its way. It's on its way. 4 words, just get them tattooed someplace inside of you. Whatever it is that you would like to attract into your life, know that it's on its way. And I want to say to you that as you begin to get your thoughts more harmonized with Tao thinking, that is, with the thinking of the source, the thinking of God, that which always has been, that which does nothing but leaves nothing undone. As you begin to more and more harmonize in this way, what happens is that you start elevating your thoughts so that the habit of how you think becomes more harmonized rather than a polarity with what you want to attract. It becomes harmonized with it, and it becomes your natural way of how you think all the time. And you start then beginning to teach your children the same way of thinking. So you just catch them when they start saying things like, oh, with my luck, it won't work out. Why have any of us ever learned to say, with my luck, and having it mean things aren't going to work out? Why wouldn't you say, and just have it as your habit, with my luck, it'll probably show up faster than it normally does? Why not have that kind of a way? Because here's what happens. As you begin to shift the way that you think and have an anticipation that this thing is going to work out for you, you can only act upon your thoughts. And as you get these higher and higher thoughts, what happens is that the thought is now more aligned with what it is you want to attract, and then you start acting upon that thought. And as you start acting upon the thought that it will work out, that it's probably on its way, you start to see how this whole system all works. In other words, call it the universe, whatever you want, begins to conspire with you. It begins to act almost where you suddenly become a collaborator with fate. And instead of fate being something that just might or might not happen to you, you're in collaboration with what it is that you want to attract. I mean, ask any physician, there's physicians here today, ask them about something called the will to live. Ask them about somebody who's going in for a corneal transplant and thinks that I'm going to see when this thing is done, rather than someone who thinks it probably won't work out. And which one would they rather work with? What is this thing called the will to live? What is this thing, this inner kind of thing that says, I refuse to allow myself to think? I say to my mother, who's 90 years old, almost 91 years old. I was with her for the last 5 days, every day, all morning long with her. And she's been going through some difficulties and so on. Most of you saw her on the PBS show, if you saw The Inspiration. She has always said to me how she was going to die. She said it to me when she was 60. what her death was going to look like, when she was going to die in her sleep, and it was going to be, it was going to be a peaceful thing, and she was going to do it when she was ready. When she was ready, she would leave, and she would know when it was time. And she says, don't think it's time. I said, well, you got a hangnail there. Maybe we should just move on with it. And she said, no, I'll tell you when I'm ready. But she has always said, I will never allow Alzheimer's into my life. She's always said, that is not something, she'll say things like, well, I can't remember this name quite as well as I did before, but that concept of all, it's just not anything that I've ever allowed myself to think is a possibility. And I said to her, well, what if you're wrong? She'll say, well, who'll know the difference? And they've done research on this, in studies on gerontology, where what does your life look like from 60 plus? Versus what does your life look like from 60 down to into your 20s? That people who live a dynamic life into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, people who feel strong, who don't feel that getting older means that I have to in any way decline any place, physically or mentally. Getting older has nothing to do with the concept of declining. That when people are in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and this is their perception of what their life is going to be like when they are in their 60s, that those people have a much greater chance of not attracting the kinds of diseases that are so much age-related as do people who think of old as infirm and declining throughout their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. That you change the way you believe about that and you say declining is not a possibility. I don't think about what's missing. You don't put your attention on what's missing. You don't tell other people about what's missing. And you don't tell other people about what you can't do and what isn't working and how terrible the world is. And the Tao teaches so much about it was written for leaders, people in positions of power. But I've translated all of that into your own level of leadership. And the great leaders are the ones who eschew violence. You have got to get yourself to a place where you don't allow yourself to have violent thoughts come into your consciousness. That means you got to watch the movies you're watching. That means the games that your children are playing, video games, have got to be monitored and removed when they have violence built into them. It means that you don't watch the news and you don't read the stories, endlessly reaffirming what a terrible place this world is. It is not a terrible place. It's a perfect place. It's a beautiful place. There are just some leaders who are connected to Tao and others who are not. And we can create the kind of world that we want to create when enough of us begin to say, not part of my consciousness. Nope, I don't buy gossip. No, I don't buy violence. No, I don't have anything to do with that. And you just turn the channel, you turn it off. I pick up a Time magazine when I get on a flight and I go through and I say, I won't read the stories that involve killing. I won't read this. I don't need to hear any more about any more people blowing themselves up. I don't need to continue to have that as a part of my consciousness because I want to be someone who radiates out God-realized thinking. That's what I want to do. And I can't do that if I'm constantly being imbued with that. So I just go through the pages, and usually I say, oh, just threw away another $4.95. There's nothing in it to read. Every once in a while, good story about maybe Tiger Woods or something, but by and large, there's not much in there. And you don't have to fill yourself with that kind of energy. So you don't put your thoughts on what's missing. You don't put your thoughts on what always has been. You don't put your thoughts on what others want for you, unless you want more of what others want for you to continue to show up into your life. So that if you're having conflicts with anybody that's out there, you don't have to put your attention on any thought that is out of harmony with the relationship that you would like to have. It doesn't have to be. You can have a love story replace a hate story by just changing your thoughts in any moment of your life. As you'll see, some of you will see it this afternoon, as Katie works with some of you and does the work and teaches you to ask yourself these questions about how can you be sure? How can you be sure that that thought is true? Why not have a love relationship with your ex-husband or your ex-wife? Why not have a love relationship with your in-laws? Why not? Why not have it with everyone on the planet? Why not? Indeed, why not? Every moment of your life, this choice is yours. You can either be a host to God or a hostage to your ego. It's your call. God bless you, and thank you for your attention. Namaste. Thank you.
But on June the 26th of last year, I made an announcement to my family. I told them that I had written 41 books. Many of them I have been blessed to have appear on bestseller lists all around the world. And that I was not going to do that anymore. I had completed that part of my life, and I had some other things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to just sort of take it easy now. I'm 72 years old, and I don't want to have that pressure to face those empty pages over and over and over again, as I've been doing since I was in my 30s. That was June the 26th. On June the 27th, I woke up and I began writing. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote for the next 5 months. And I couldn't stop, because there is something inside of me that is a calling. There is something moving the pieces around that is bigger than who I am and what this ego of mine says. And it's getting in touch with that inner drive, that part of us that says, this is what you're here for. This is what you came into this world to be. I was being interviewed by the New York Times about a decade or so ago, and there was also a gentleman there who's a very famous writer. His name was Arthur Miller, perhaps the most famous American playwright of the 20th century. You've all read Death of a Salesman and The Crucible and so many others. And Arthur Miller was 91 years old at the time, and he was asked the question, are you working on another play? And I'll never forget his answer, because it inspired me in many ways. He said, I don't know, but I probably am. But I probably am. That there is something that calls all of us here. And I just want to speak a little bit about that in the time that I have here this morning. There was, I have said that if there is, I wrote these words out last night. If there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, or that there may be, and think about that for a moment. If there's intelligence behind life, and all of science points to the fact that there is some kind of an intelligence behind life, behind this body that you were hearing about in the last hour, that there's something mystical, if you will. And I brought with me just a quote from the man who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He was Einstein's greatest teacher. He was considered the father of modern quantum physics. His name was Max Planck. And on receiving the Nobel Prize for Physics, this is what he said. He said, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as the result of all of my research about atoms, this much, that there is no matter as such. That all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration, and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must, as scientists, all assume that behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. This divine intelligence that is behind everything that is working in this body that we are so consumed with and so concerned about and how to keep it healthy, that there is something beyond that. One of my favorite poets once observed, he said, what if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there picked a strange and wonderful flower? And what if when you awoke, you held that flower in your hand? Ah, what then? Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who wrote The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and I wonder when I ask that question, I've done it on a couple of my public television specials, to ask that question, do you really believe that such a thing is possible? Because as I wrote out last night, I said if there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, then all of that intelligence must be innate in each creation of that intelligence. This universal mind, or this, whatever you want to call it, divine mind, the great Tao. I wrote a book 8 years ago called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based on the ancient teachings of the Tao Te Ching by a man named Lao Tzu, who wrote it 2,500 years ago, 500 years before the birth of Christ. And in that great tome, some call it the wisest book ever written, there's 81 verses, and I decided to write an essay on each of those 81 verses and how to apply it in today's life. He said, the great Tao, God, soul, this matrix behind all of life, he said, it does nothing, and yet it leaves nothing undone. He said, each and every one of you are doing nothing. You're all just being done. There is something moving the checkers around in this checkerboard that we call our life, that Arthur Miller was referring to when he said, I don't know, but I probably am. And that I said, when I said to my children, I'm through writing books, not only have I written an entirely new book, which was 144,000 words that I couldn't stop writing. I wrote it all by hand, every word of it. It's why I'm sitting on this chair, because my neck went crazy, sitting there hour after hour writing about all the significant quantum moments that have appeared in my life that turned the direction of my life from where it was headed into a right turn and sometimes into an about face. And I call this book, I Can See Clearly Now. I can see clearly that the things that were taking place when I really thought that I knew what I was doing, and something else was in charge of the whole process. One of the famous observations of one of our great humorists, Mark Twain, he said, the thing that gets you into trouble isn't what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And there's so much of what we know for sure that just ain't so. Just like what I knew for sure that I wasn't going to be writing. Not only have I written another entire book and looked at all of these significant factors and features that were really at play, moving me about, but I've written another book on top of that I'm about 3/4 of the way through, based upon how to apply the Bhagavad Gita, the great song of the Lord that Gandhi based his life on, and how we can apply it each and every day of our life. So there's a wonderful poem I want to share with you that reflects what Mark Twain was saying, that it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. It's called The Cookie Thief. It was written by Valerie Cox. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shops and bought a bag of cookies and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. So she munched the cookies and watched the clock as this gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. And when only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. And with a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. And she snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve, and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she had been so galled, and she sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane, she sank in her seat, then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned with despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Isn't that beautiful? Valerie Cox.
Yesterday, I presented the preliminaries, if you will, to what I think is the most important part of the message. I spoke at length about the power of the mind. And one of the things that I had lunch with Linda today, when I was having lunch, we were talking about it. She was saying that the shocking thing for her in that experience was how quickly the changing of a thought impacts the muscles or the entire physiology of the body. In Power versus Force, Dr. Hawkins has presented a scale that I want to present to you here today, and it's just an arbitrary scale. It's numbers these numbers could go from 0 to 2 million, or they could go to 0 to 10, or whatever. His scale goes from 0 to 1,000, and what it is a scale that measures energy. Now remember, when I spoke yesterday, the idea that Einstein said that nothing happens until something moves. That everything in the universe is energy. And energy is not good or bad, right or wrong, moral or immoral. Energy is fast or slow, high or low. And that our objective in understanding this and what it means to us is to be able to move to higher and higher and faster energies. That when a higher energy, a faster energy, is put into the presence or the energy field of a very low and a very slow energy, that energy is nullified, the lower energy, and dissolved. It disappears. But more than it dissolving and disappearing, for example, if you're in a room of darkness, darkness is just simply a lower and a slower energy than light. Light moves very, very fast. The absence of light shows a very slow and a very low energy. If you're in a dark room and you are about to light a candle in that dark room, you don't have to say to the darkness, you better get out of here now. You're going to have to dissolve. You're going to have to scurry because I'm about to bring some light in here. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is light a candle, turn on a light, and the darkness dissolves. the darkness disappears. But more than that, and this is really crucial for what I'm presenting here this afternoon, the darkness is converted to light. So that when you bring higher energy to the presence of lower and slower energy, energy that we call evil, energy that we call disease, energy that we call depression, you are not only sending the disease and the depression and the despair away, you are converting that very energy into the higher and the faster energy that is being brought to its presence. The same thing is true of hatred. When you bring love to the presence of hatred, hatred not only dissolves, but it turns to love. When you bring higher energy, even in the field of medicine, we're discovering now with energy medicine that experimentation is being done now. Andy Weil, who I was just with the other day, suggests that the medicine of the future will be energy medicine, and that medical doctors will be in medical schools will be trained in energy medicine. It'll be the real upcoming area for investigation and for research. They're now doing experiments with lasers, which are very, very, very fast energies, and they're taking tumors that are present in what we call cancerous tumors and even non-cancerous tumors, but growths in the body, and they're bombarding the tumor and the surrounding tissue with these extremely high, fast energies. And they're discovering that not only do the tumors begin to dissolve and begin to be removed, but the energy that was in the tumor is now joining with the higher, faster laser energy, and it is being converted into something that we call healing or health. The implications for what I'm speaking about here are absolutely astonishing for everything in your life. And what I'm about to present to you in this little paradigm in the next few moments is something that could change your life. As I said to you, if you don't take anything else with you, be sure to commit yourself to reading Power versus Force. And his follow-up to it, if you're up to it, which I had some about here as well, it's called The Eye of the Eye. And in there, he talks about how we can calibrate virtually everything in our lives. Every book of the Bible has been calibrated. All of the great songs have been calibrated. The calibration goes like this. Over here to my left is a calibration of 0. And as far as I can go on this stage, let's say up to the speaker, represents 1,000. The energy level of 1,000 to here. All right. Now, anything that goes up to number 200 on this scale that I'm just arbitrarily giving to you, let's say 200 is right here, represents something called force. And every thought and every emotion that you have that calibrates between 0 and 200 is a thought or an emotion that weakens you in one way or another and lowers the energy field. And those calibrations, those thoughts, I'll give you the number 20 is the lowest, and the thought is shame. And this, by the way, is a 29-year study that was conducted over almost his entire professional lifetime. This is a medical doctor and a PhD researcher as well. And in this 30 years, these kinesthesiological tests that I just briefly demonstrated with Linda up here yesterday are ways that we can determine, because as I was trying to point out to you, the body comes from something that we call truth, perfection. And it can only respond to truth. The moment that you introduce a lie into the body, the mind can fool, but the body, which is this perfect creation of God, only responds to that which is true. And so you can test virtually anything, even the lives of the greatest masters who ever walked among us, by asking questions of the body and watching how the body responds, forgetting about what the mind has to say about it. The body can only respond to truth. Number 20 is shame. At 30, we're moving up now. 30 is guilt. 50 is apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, until we reach approximately 200. Now, every energy that is below 200 is an energy that when you have that thought,
the thoughts of humiliation, of blame, of despair, of anxiety, of hatred, of scorn, any of these kinds of thoughts, these thoughts are in what he calls force. And whenever you use force as a way of communicating, a way of talking, a way of being, you create, the problem is that we create a counterforce. And that people who calibrate below 200 in their lives, and anyone can be calibrated at any time. Even photographs can be calibrated. The photograph on the cover of A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem calibrates around 580. And it was a picture that was taken in Assisi after just an astonishing miracle had happened in my life, which I'll share a little bit with you a little bit later. And we have seen experiments where they'll take a picture of a Mother Teresa, and they'll take a picture of a Charles Manson, and they will put those photographs in envelopes that the person holding them doesn't know who is in the envelope. And the picture of Charles Manson, who calibrates somewhere around 30 or 40, will make the person go weak, and they don't even know what picture that they're holding. You have to, it's almost like I said yesterday, you have to willingly suspend your disbelief. You have to do a somersault into the inconceivable and allow yourself to open up to the possibility that every thought that you have and every emotion that you have and every internal experience that you have has an impact not only on you, on everyone that you encounter in your life and everything that you encounter in your life and whatever energy field that you radiate to.
You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Any problem can be resolved with a spiritual solution. One of the most intriguing passages in A Course in Miracles suggests that you don't have a problem, you only think you do. The opening lines of the Torah as well, in Genesis in the Bible state, God created heaven and earth, and later, and all that God created was good. If you interpret these words literally, it's quite clear that problems are impossible. If God created everything, and all that God created was good, then bad doesn't exist. But, you say, disease, disharmony, despair, and so on appear to exist and run rampant in our world. When we feel separated from our sacred center, it's easy to believe so strongly in the separation that we explain any unpleasantness as a problem. In the world of spirit or God, problems simply don't exist and aren't real. When your spiritual connection is weak, you move away from the world of spirit, and problems come from your belief in separation. Your mind creates the illusion of separateness, and your body, influenced by your ego thoughts, takes on disease. Our societies are the creation of our collective thoughts. They take on the same separation sickness, and then we have what we call social problems. All of the so-called problems, however, represent a spiritual deficit that can be remedied with spiritual solutions. Think of it this way. If you change your mind, you'll solve the problem. I've written an entire book on this subject called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. How to go about changing your mind. Can you accept the idea that it's your belief in your separation from God that creates the attitude that you label a problem? Can you explore this idea that what you're calling problems are all simply illusions or mistakes of your intellect? If God is everywhere, there's no place that God is not. Therefore, you have God with you at all times. You may believe otherwise. It is this belief system that creates your so-called problems. If you can bring truth to the presence of these illusions, they will dissolve. Just as you know that 3 plus 3 equals 6 is true and that 3 plus 3 equals 10 is untrue, by bringing truth to the presence of this arithmetic error, it simply dissolves. So too will all of your beliefs that create problems in your mind dissolve when you bring the higher energy of truth to them. St. Francis of Assisi in his famous prayer beseeches us to change our mind to this thought, where there is hatred, let me sow love. Light always dissolves darkness. Love always nullifies hate. Spirit always cancels problems. Problems exist as beliefs of your ego mind, which is unable to conceptualize an awareness of your spiritual mind, just as dark has no concept of light. By actually rewriting your agreement with reality, you can change your mind and send away any perceived problem. Change your attitude toward yourself and resolve to believe in your connectedness to the higher energy of God, even in the direst of circumstances. Turn anything that seems problematic over to your higher self, trusting that the problem is not what it seems to be. Rewrite your agreement about who you are and what you're capable of achieving. Your new agreement with reality. Your thoughts are the source of virtually everything in your life. Every relationship that you're in is something that you carry around with you. If your relationship is lousy, it's because you think of it that way. The person you're in a relationship with isn't with you in this moment, or when you're at work, or when you're in the bathroom, but your thoughts about that person are always with you. The only way you can experience another person is in your thoughts. You can't get behind their eyeballs and be them. You can only process them with your thoughts. If you look for what's wrong about them and store that negative image in your mind, then that's where your relationship exists. If you change your thoughts to what you love rather than do what you label as wrong, you've just changed your entire relationship. It went from lousy to great by your changing your mind. Try to always remember that you carry every relationship around with you in your head. Robert Frost reminds us, you love the things you love for what they are. When you forget this and process other people on the basis of what you think they should be, or what they used to be, or how they compare to what you are, then you've sent love away, and in your mind, the relationship is soured. You experience everything and everyone in your thoughts. Change your thoughts, and you change what you carry around in your head as problems. The world is just the way it is. The economy is just as it should be. The people who are behaving badly in the world are doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can process it in any way that you choose. If you're filled with anger about all of those problems, you are one more person who contributes to the pollution of anger. Your desire to do something about the lowest energies will motivate you to be more loving, more feeling, and more peaceful. And in so doing, you may influence those who are the farthest removed from God to return to their source. This new agreement with yourself to always stay connected to Spirit, even when it seems to be the most difficult thing to do, will allow whatever degree of perfect harmony that your body was designed for to proliferate. Turn diseases over to God and treat your body to regular exercise, healthy food, large amounts of pure water, and plenty of rest to allow it to function as a container for Spirit to flow through. Your new agreement with reality, in which you blended your physical self and your personality with your spiritual God-connected self, will begin to radiate a higher energy of love and light. Wherever you go, others will experience the glow of your God consciousness, and disharmony and disorder and all manner of problems simply will not flourish in your presence. Become, quote, an instrument of thy peace, unquote, as St. Francis desires in the first line of his famous prayer. Move up the ladder of human awareness from the lowest to the highest. Become a mystical being by simply changing your mind from one that created and experienced problems to one that resolves them.
Love and God, love and divine essence are exactly the same, and they are unconditional. You have to have the same love for God or for this divine essence that it has always had for you. Through the worst of your days, through the lowest points in your life, this love has always been there. It's available to you. You could take it at any time. You're never turned away. And it's a supply that's inexhaustible. You can't exhaust it. You can't make it go away. It is there. So, there is a power in unconditional love that is very difficult for most of us to grasp. I don't know if you've ever been around a being who lives and experiences unconditional love. But when you are, you discover that the energy that they radiate is infectious, like being in a room with Mother Teresa. Just being in her presence. They said of Jesus, they said of Buddha, that when they would go into a village, just their presence in the village, nothing more, just their presence in the village would change the consciousness of those around them. From the perspective of having this divinity within you, which is a love for what is going to manifest, what happens when you start picturing your world this way is that your life starts to change. What changes is you feel more peaceful. Love and peace, unconditional love and peace, really go hand in hand. And when you get this quality, and what I suggest to you here is that in order to practice this, to understand that you sleep better, you eat better, you automatically begin to take better care of your body. Toxins are no longer that important to you. Exercise becomes something that you just absolutely do because you're treating your body with unconditional love. And it demands that, it encourages that, it wants that. It doesn't want to be dreary, it doesn't want to be overweight, it doesn't want to be drugged up, it doesn't want to be lethargic. It wants to be flowing, because the universal energy that makes the whole thing work flows. It doesn't stop. That energy isn't stopping. It's not stagnant. It's a flowing. When you start doing these things and these changes start taking place, what happens is also the prosperity that you thought you couldn't have also begins to flow. You've stopped all blockages. And while this just sounds like, oh yeah, but I don't have to do anything, you will do something. You will act upon this unconditional love. It's like go on a program for 3 days. Make a 3-day program in which you are going to communicate with your spouse, your lover, one of your children, a friend, a coworker, a boss, someone that you are close to. And every thought that you are going to have directed at that person is going to be one of unconditional love. No matter how crappy they may act, no matter how much complaining they may do, no matter how much you find them to be irritating or whatever, you are going to respond with unconditional love. Not gushy, oh, isn't that great, you're throwing up on me again. Not that at all. But just the thought, the absence of judgment, the absence of anger, the absence of the ego demand that says, you know, you should really be like I am. You're wrong and I'm right. You just let go of that. Try it for 3 days. A 3-day program of unconditional love. And watch what happens to your energy level. And watch what happens to the things that you want to manifest in your life. And begin to notice how you're sleeping and what the content of your dreams are. And notice how other people begin to treat you. You see, unconditional love is joy and it's also power. There's an enormous power, but it's not the power that is an investment in having power over others. It's a power of being able to tune in finally to the thing that makes the whole universe work. What do you think keeps this whole planet from falling off into an abyss? What do you think it is that keeps your shoulder from falling off? What do you think it is that keeps the cells of your eyeballs in their sockets? There's a force, there's an energy, there's something that is working that keeps everything in place, that makes it all work, that makes it all flow. You finally begin to tune into that. You start to trust your nature more than you trust your intellect, which is your ego. Your nature knows how to work. It knows how to make your body work. Your nature knows exactly how many nutrients to send to all the different organs of the body. You don't have to think about that every time you eat something. It's working. Your nature knows how much oxygen to take in and how much to let out. You don't need a formula for that. Your intellect says that water there can't possibly be made up of 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen. Those are gases. Your intellect says there's no way. But nevertheless it is, isn't it, as we examine it. So your nature works perfectly in perfect harmony, as does everything else that keeps the oceans from tilting on their side and having tidal waves. This nature of yours that you are in, that is in you, that you are not separate from, is flowing. It's perfect. It's unconditional. It doesn't judge. It doesn't ask anything. Be that, and the rest of this will fall right into place. It's astounding how powerful this unconditional love is.
Thank you, thank you. My name is Wayne Dyer, and I'm 72 years old, and I have sex almost every day. Almost on Monday, almost on Tuesday, almost... Anyway. That was Jack LaLanne's opening for 20 years until he was 94 years old. So I borrowed it from him. My mother passed away 2 days ago. And I didn't... I mean, she was 96 years old and in a coma the last few days of her life.
But it's an interesting passage. I thought it would be, I remember my introduction to a different kind of psychology was brought to me by a man named Abraham Maslow back in 1962. And I was fortunate enough to be able to study with Dr. Maslow, and he really introduced me to a different way of looking at how to help people and how to improve the quality of our own lives. It was a turning point for me. And one of the things he spoke about were these people that he calls self-actualizing people, which, if you remember Maslow's pyramid and the hierarchy, and you go from your basic needs to the very top of the pyramid, the very top of the pyramid is something called self-actualization. And he described self-actualizing people. One of the flaws of self-actualizing people is that they get over death almost as if it didn't happen. They have an awareness within them that nothing dies, that everything that materializes, of course, changes form. But there is something. My teacher in India, his name was Swami Muktananda. Many of you have read. And he was asked the question, "What is real, Master? What is real?" And Muktananda said, "That is real, which never changes. Everything else is illusion." So I've been looking at, I've been thinking about Muktananda and thinking about Dr. Maslow, who passed away on the 7th of June, 1970. And that was the same day that I was walking across the stage in Detroit at Cobo Hall, receiving my PhD in almost the same hour. It was as if he had said to me, "I've explained this whole idea of self-actualization to the academic world. Now you explain it to the cab drivers and the school teachers and the nurses and the yoga students and everyone else. This whole idea that there is a higher place where each of us can reach right here while we're here." And I've been thinking about all of this since my mom left. And there's pictures of my mom all over my apartment on Maui. I have pictures of her on the wall when she was 10 years old in 1926. And another picture of her reading a poem that she wrote when she was 12 years old in 1928 about the election that year. Any of you remember the election that year? 1928. Smith or Hoover, who will it be? Both are running for the presidency. Smith is the thin one, Hoover's the fat. My, such an uproar. Where are we at? That was my mom at 12. And I have pictures of my mother at 30, and I have a picture of her sitting on my lap on her 75th birthday. And I look at that pictures and I say, which one of them is my mother? Was she that 10-year-old? According to Muktananda, that is real, which never changes, and all of us are here in bodies that we believe is who we are. We're totally convinced of it. I was in a 21-year-old body, and I can't find any part of it anywhere on the planet. But while I was in it, I was absolutely convinced that this is who I am. And then I moved into another body, and another body, and another body. And the same is true for each and every one of us here, that there is some part of us that is infinite, that is the soul, that is the spirit. It makes no difference what you call it. Many of you know that I wrote a book about 7 years ago after living the Tao Te Ching for a full year. It's called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And I took each of the 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching, and I took a full year. I began on January the 1st, 2005, and I read verse 1. And I would take 4.5 days, 4 days to contemplate it, think about it, meditate on it, try to understand it. And then in the half day that I had, I would look at a painting of Lao Tzu from 2,500 years ago. And someone had channeled this painting and sent it to me from my radio show. And I don't do any writing now without him looking at it. And I was just sort of gaze at this drawing that this person imagined Lao Tzu to be. And it speaks to me. And I would write an essay. The Tao Te Ching, some call it the wisest book ever written. Someone once sent me a copy of a book called Jesus and Lao Tzu. And on the left-hand side of the page were all the sayings of Lao Tzu. And on the right-hand side of the page were all the sayings of Jesus that mirrored what Lao Tzu had said 500 years before his birth. Now, I'm not saying Jesus was plagiarizing, but I am saying there are eternal truths. And these eternal truths come to me directly out of the Tao. And I did this for each of the 81 verses of the Tao. And the opening line of the Tao Te Ching says, "The Tao that can be named is not the Tao." As soon as you try to define this invisibleness that is within each and every one of us, that keeps occupying these new bodies all the time, while the body continues to change, who we are is infinite. So I wrote a few words out about what I think of as the soul. Let me just share them with you. The ideal of the soul, this part of you that is never changing, this part of you that is infinite. And that word infinite is a very important word to think about because it's the opposite of finite. Finite means something begins and ends. If it didn't end any place or didn't begin any place, we wouldn't be able to call it finite. We would say it is always continuing. The minute that it stops, the minute we have a form to it, the minute we place anything on it that is associated with this physical corporeal world that we all live in, it moves from the infinite to the finite. So to try to define that which is infinite with a brain or a mind that is finite is an impossibility. Lao Tzu knew this and understood this. It's why meditation is such an important part of the process of coming to our highest self, coming to know who we are. It's the place where there are no beginnings. Herman Melville once said that God's one and only voice is silence. Is silence. It's the one place where there's nothing finite there. And Blaise Pascal, the famous French philosopher and scientist, once said that all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
But most of us just aren't comfortable with this because we have come to believe and trust in the evidence for who we are is on the basis of that which we can touch and see and feel and smell, what our five senses tell us. But our five senses lie to us. William Blake pointed that out beautifully in one of his poems back in 1777. He said, to see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and infinity in an hour, we are all led to believe a lie when we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night, to perish in a night, while the soul slept in beams of light. We are all infinite beings in a temporary human experience. I've said it over and over again. Whenever people ask me what's my very favorite quote, my very favorite observation, it came from Pierre Teilhard, the French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his outrageous ideas. He said that we're not here as human beings having a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. We are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And coming to a place where we live our lives from that infinite place and beginning to know our soul, it's one of the reasons why I accepted an invitation to come here. I do yoga myself 5-6 times a week. I know the significance of it for me in my own body and my own health, my own life, my own emotional state. I know that when I meditate, I'm better. I know that when I do yoga, I'm healed. And so I came. So getting to know the soul, the spirit, and not identifying ourselves on the basis of our physical senses. It's the essence of my newest book, which is a PBS special called Wishes Fulfilled. It's the whole message behind all of it, is to really come up with a specific way to come in contact with this infinite part of ourselves. Now remember, if it's infinite, it doesn't stop any place. It doesn't start any place. That's by definition infinite. So if something doesn't start and doesn't stop, what is it doing? It has to be expanding, doesn't it? The minute it stops expanding, it's finite. We're no longer talking about the soul. We're talking about what Blake said, we've become, we see with, not through our eyes. So here's what I jotted down. The ideal of the soul, the thing that it asks for, is neither knowledge, nor light, nor happiness. The ideal of the soul is space, immensity. The one thing it needs, more than anything else, is to be free to expand and to reach out and to embrace the infinite. Yeah, the ideal of the soul is infinity, because that's what the soul is. It is miserable when it is circumscribed or restricted in any way. Now, I have 8 children, 6 beautiful daughters and 2 sons. And one of the things that I know, I used to say that before I had children, I had 8 theories about how to raise children. And now I have 8 children and no theories. All right? But one of the things I know about children is that no one likes being told what to do. And this isn't just children, this is all of us. One of my favorite songs is a song from when I was back in high school. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Boy, you know it. Don't fence me in. Don't restrict me. Don't put boundaries on me. Don't tell me what I can do and what I can't do. Don't tell me how to be there. Don't tell me what to wear, what to think. Don't tell me how to do yoga. Don't tell me, I don't want to be told. This is the soul speaking, always. The soul is constantly having a desire to expand and grow. And anything or anyone that comes into your life that attempts to do that, you will find yourself fighting it and reaching back. Particularly will you find this in your yoga practice. Yoga, the word yoga means what? Union. Union with what? Your highest self. Union with God. This is what the highest self is. It's the part of you, the place within you that is not worshiping God. That's what religion has brought to us and taught us, that God is outside of us. It's the part and the place within you that knows that at your highest level, you are God. Each and every one of us. And when you are connected to the highest place within yourself, when you are connected to the God that you are, you have all the powers of the creative source of the universe. You become the Tao. The Tao becomes you. So, yoga, or union, is really a way of becoming a manifester. Now, in order to become a manifester, someone who was able to attract and place into their lives what they place their attention on, there are certain, we saw a lot about something called The Secret not too long ago on all the newspapers and magazines and on the news and always. And I was asked to be a part of that and stayed away from it for different reasons. Because for me, manifesting is not about attracting what you want. Manifesting is an awareness and an understanding that you attract what you are. I have been studying in depth something called the I Am discourses. And I'll share just a little bit about it here. But one of my very favorite quotes, this is from Unveiled Mysteries, says, "The attitude of one person who wishes to work in conscious cooperation with the ascended host, with God, should not be, I wish I could go to them for instruction and pray to God or the source, that from which we all originated." T.S. Eliot said, "We shall not cease from exploration. But at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time." Now, the poet was speaking about dying, leaving the body. I'm not. I think we can come to know that place from which we originated and live from it. And then the words that Jesus spoke to us in the book of John, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. It was Jesus who said, when he was about to be stoned for blasphemy, and he said, "Why would you stone me?" And they said, "You blaspheme. You claim to be God. You are a man." And he said, "Is it not written in your laws that I have said, you are gods, all of you?"
the infinite place within you that needs to expand and wants to grow, that which we call your life. I mean, when my mother died, she was down to about 85 pounds. But if they were to weigh her the second before she died, and then weigh her the second after, her body weighed exactly the same. And yet, she was no longer alive. So her life, that what we call her life, is weightless. It's formless. It has no beginning, it has no end. You can't weigh it. How can you weigh that which has no form? So your life, the thing that we call your life, is God. That's what you are. That's what every single one of us are. So here's what Saint Germain said. The attitude of one who wishes to work in conscious cooperation with the ascended host should not be, I wish I could go to them for instruction, but rather, I will so purify, discipline, and perfect myself and become such an expression of divine love and wisdom and power, then I can assist in their work. Then I will automatically be drawn to them. If you want to attract into your life what it is that you feel is missing, then what you have to do is to become like these great ascended masters. I honestly feel that I spent the first 10 years of my life in a series of foster homes and orphanages. My father walked out on his family and left my mother with 3 boys under the age of 4 when she was 23 years old. And so I had a great blessing in those earliest years of my life to be able to go within and discover something that I came here to teach, which is self-reliance. To learn how to rely upon ourselves. And I honestly feel that I'm right now writing on a book. It was very hard for me to leave Maui and get on that plane and fly to Sacramento and take a car up here and all of that. Not because I don't think it's beautiful here, but I'm where I belong anyway, so I stopped fighting all of that stuff anyway. But it was because I'm in the midst of writing. And I'm writing a book called I Can See Clearly Now. And it's sort of like a memoir, except that it's a look at all of the, what seemed like just isolated events that showed up in my life, which led me to the next step, which led me to the next, which have arrived here in 2012 at the age of 72. And as I write this, and I've written almost 50,000 words in the last 6 weeks, it's almost like an obsession, because it isn't me writing. It is me as writing. It is something that is, Lao Tzu said, none of you are doing anything. He said, you're all just being done. You ever have a sense of that when you look in the mirror? And you look at your body and you say, what the hell is going on here? I say, what's this chicken neck stuff? Where the hell did that come from? What am I doing with hair growing out of my ears? And I said, that doesn't need it. I could use it up here, you know, but it's... And you have a sense that in this physical world, that there's nothing for you to do. Just keep this thing that houses your soul in as healthy a space as you can, but basically it's doing what it's doing. And you, inside of there, the infinite you, is just an observer to the whole process. And isn't that one of the things that we learn in our very first yoga days? It's just, don't be so attached to your body and what it can do and how it hurts to try to do that. And can I balance myself here? And can I do a downward up or down or whatever the hell they call all of those things that are out there? I just do Bikram, so it's... So there's a sense of this awareness. So because of the time, I mean, I usually take 3 or 4 hours or sometimes 3 or 4 days to go through this, and I'm trying to do this in a brief amount of time. The reason that most of us cannot reach this exalted state that I want to present to you in as in the limited time that we have is because we have come to believe in our limitations. We've come to believe in our ordinariness. We've come to believe that who we are is not God, is not divine. All right? So in order to transcend that mentality, you have to sort of reprogram your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is the mind that is doing virtually everything that you do. It's the mind that got you here into this room, that put your mat down, that got you dressed this morning, that get your breakfast. When you get in the car, you don't think about, oh, how do I start this thing, and how do I got to make a right turn here. Do I slow down? Do I not? You all programmed your conscious mind, programmed your subconscious mind to do all of these things on automatic. And according to my friend Bruce Lipton, about 96 or 97% of what we do all day long, every day of our lives, 24/7, is done by our subconscious mind. So we have been programmed to believe in our ordinariness. I don't know if you saw my most recent PBS special, but I opened it up with a little story from Portia Nelson, so I'll just share it here with you if you haven't seen it. If you have PBS, you probably have, because that's about all they play. And I'm very proud of that, and we've raised close to $250 million for public television. So, well, since 1999, it's been amazing. So this was something that Portia Nelson, who I knew, who passed away a few years back, 10 years back now. She lived up in Seattle. And she was at a seminar, and they were asked to write the autobiography of their life in five verses, 5 chapters. So, and they gave them only like cards this size. Actually, they were smaller than this. They were 3 by 5 cards. So write out chapter 1 of your life and just go to where you are today. And I remember doing this very same thing, but what she wrote was so brilliant that I asked her daughter if we could put it on public television, which I did on the most recent show, and we made a contribution to Portia's work. So this is what she wrote down in the chapter 5 of her life. Chapter 1, she said, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault, and it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time for me to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am, and it is my own fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. Finally, I walk down another street. Isn't that great? So in the time I have left, I want to talk to you about walking down another street. And this other street is a street in which you have an awareness that not only do you have a physical body, but you have come to believe that this physical body is who you are, and that you have locked yourself into these 5 senses and decided that whatever evidence they provide for you is how you identify and define your reality. By what I see, by what I hear, by what I smell, by what my life looks like, by how much money I have, by the stuff that I possess. And this is the world of the ego, and this is the world of the false self.
according to my teacher, Nisargadatta Maharaj in India, who passed away in 1986. The false self is the ego. The ego is the part of us that has come to believe that who I am is defined by these 6 things. Who I am is what I have. And so we spend a big hunk of our life attempting to get as much stuff as we possibly can. The Tao teaches something very different. Let go of everything you have. When I moved to Maui in 2005 full-time, I gave up everything that I owned. Everything. 20,000 books, all of my photographs, records of every description, furniture, all the things in the house, all my clothing, shoes. It was all donated to people who lived on underneath a bypass in Florida. And let go of all of it. So the ego teaches us you are what you have. The Tao teaches us let go of everything that you have. Do less and accomplish more. One of Lao Tzu's most famous observations was, I do nothing and leave nothing undone. My son has taken to becoming a spiritual Taoist. Every time I tell him to do something, he says, I do nothing. And I leave nothing undone. But there's much wisdom in that. I could go on into that. The second thing that the ego teaches us is that who I am is not only what I have, but who I am is what I do, what I accomplish. And so we spend a big hunk of our lives believing that the way that we become, quote, successful, happy, fulfilled, self-actualized, whatever it might be, is on the basis of what I accomplish, what my resume looks like, how many promotions I get. And so we send our children off to school and we ask them to learn to identify themselves on how much they get and what they accomplish. Your grades become more important than what it is that you are studying. What you own, what clothes you wear, what labels you have, and so on. And we become obsessed with this kind of absurdity. And this is the false self at work. The third thing that the ego teaches us is that I am what other people think of me. I am my reputation. So becoming obsessed with our reviews, what people think of us, other people's opinions, getting the approval of others. We talk about peer group approval needs and so on. I have 8 children that aren't concerned about those things. They were never raised with that kind of a mentality. The whole idea of, trying to please other people was something that they consistently heard from their mother and myself, that this isn't important to us. We're not attached to that. And this kind of an attachment. So the Tao teaches us that what you think of me is none of my business. What the ego teaches us is that what you think of me is the most important thing that I have, and so I'll do whatever it is that I need to do in order to get you to agree with me, to like me, to approve of me, and so on. The fourth thing that the ego teaches us, this false self, is that who I am is separate from everyone else. And so we are raised in this world of the false self, which teaches us that we have to be in competition with everyone else. We have to defeat someone else. Being number one is the most important thing, and you see people doing this all the time at football games and at bat, and you'll see it when the Olympics come up, that the gold medal is more important than anything else, and you'll see people weeping and sobbing over this idea that I have to be better than somebody else in order to be fulfilled in my life. The fifth thing that the ego teaches us is that I am separate not only from everybody else, but that I am separate from what's missing in my life. The Tao teaches us that there is no place that God is not. If there is no place that God is not, then God must be in you. And if there is no place that God is not, then God must also be in all that I perceive to be missing from my life. And therefore, in order to become a manifester and to attract into my life what I want, I simply have to realign myself. I have to rejoin. I have to yoga myself to God. And the most egregious error of the ego is a belief system that says that who I am is separate from God, that God is something outside of me. We have not been raised to understand and believe that at our basic core, what Lao Tzu called our original nature, what we are is love. And all we have to do is be that and live that. There was a great Indian poet. His name was Rabindranath Tagore. And he received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for a collection of poetry called the Gitanjali. And in that poem, that long poem, 90-some verses, one of those verses says this. He's speaking of the ego. He said, I went out alone on my way to my tryst. But who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame, but I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. That's a great poet. And that's a great piece of truth. That in order to get to this place, I speak about, that Maslow spoke to me about and trained me to think about, called self-actualization, is that we have to stop evaluating who we are on the basis of those ego identifiers, and instead begin to see ourselves as divine love, as pieces of God. The Native Americans used to say that no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. And look at us. Look at what happened just down the road from here in Colorado a few days ago. What is it about us that we have to create instruments of death in order to feel good about ourselves? What is it about us that we have to destroy each other and be in competition with each other and even create things called weapons? It's why Lao Tzu left the place where he left in ancient China at the time of the Warring States. And a big part of the Tao, something like 31 verses out of the 81 verses, speak to the absurdity of having weapons and killing each other. He said that every death in battle should not be celebrated, but should be mourned, because it gives evidence that we have not reached this place and understand what T.S. Eliot was speaking, this place from which we originated, this place to which we shall return. From A Course in Miracles, I jotted this down the other day. The memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict. A mind at war with itself remembers not eternal gentleness. What you remember is a part of you, for you must be as God created you. Let all this madness be undone for you, and return in peace to the remembrance of God still shining in your quiet mind. Coming to know God, it's not about discovering something that resides outside of you. It's about remembering what's inside of you and living from that place. I don't believe that God is interested in us loving God. I believe God is interested in us loving each other and figuring out a way to do this regardless. And that's why I pray so hard for the idea that we will have people, especially in this election year, who will stand up and have the balls to say, it's time to stop making these weapons of mass destruction. And they are weapons of mass destruction. The idea that somehow in our Second Amendment we are entitled to have weapons that kill 100 people a minute. How far is that going to go? Now they're talking in Syria about using chemical weapons on their own people. Does the Second Amendment provide for us, to all of us, if we want to use chemical weapons to protect ourselves? I mean, how far does this absurdity go? Anyway, that's my rant. I'll get off of that. The way to this higher place within ourselves is understanding two very important words. These words are the basis for a children's book that I've just done called I Am, Why Two Little Words Mean So Much. Any moms right here in the front? You a mom? Here, would you like to have this for your baby? You're welcome. God bless you. Namaste. So, let me just take you back for a few moments here. Back before Lao Tzu. Now, Lao Tzu was here on this planet at the time of the Warring States in China in 500 BC, approximately the same time that the Bhagavad Gita was also being created in India, the Song of the Lord. 800 years, 8 centuries before that, 1,300 years before the birth of Christ, comes one of the most ancient, if not the most ancient spiritual texts extant on the planet today. It's called the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. In the second book of the Torah, Exodus, Moses is, well, you know the story of Moses, but if you don't, let me refresh you. At the time of Moses' birth, the Pharaoh, who had held so many of the Israelites captive and enslaved, had ordered that all male babies to be born of, from Israelite mothers, because he had heard that there was someone coming that could be a danger to his power. He ordered that all male babies be executed. Well, Moses' mother gave birth, and she just couldn't stand the idea of this baby being killed by the soldiers. So she wrapped him up in a blanket and put him in a basket, must have been waterproof, and floated him down the Nile. Moses, this little baby, was discovered by a woman who captured him, picked him up, and fell so in love with him that she decided to raise him as her own. It turns out that this was the daughter of the Pharaoh. So Moses' grandfather is the Pharaoh who has ordered him to be killed, but he doesn't know this. At about the age of 18, Moses gets into a fight, and with one of the people, one of the soldiers, who is trying to actually punish and kill one of the Israelites. And so Moses fights him and kills him. and has to run away because he knows what his punishment will be. He runs away to the Sinai, and for the next 40 years, he is a shepherd. He marries a woman named Zipporah. They have all of these children. He's a shepherd. He's out wandering about, according to this ancient text. One day, he comes across a bush, a burning bush. But the bush is not being consumed. It is just continuing to burn. And he looks at this, and suddenly the bush begins to speak. And as legend tells us, this is God speaking to Moses and saying to Moses, I have some instructions for you. I'll give it to you the way it is written. I just love this. So God calls out to Moses from this bush and says, Moses, Moses. And Moses responds with the words, here I am. These are the first words he speaks to God. Do not come closer, he said. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he continues, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. So God gives him this instruction. You are to go and free the people of Israel. So Moses says to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He answered, I will certainly be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you will all worship God at this mountain. Then Moses asked God, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I tell them? Now, the only place in all the spiritual texts where God gives his name is right here in this passage. Same name that you have. God replies to Moses, I am that I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the Israelites, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, and this is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation to come, which is our generation. All right? So, the name of God is I am, that I am. Now, every time you use the name I am, you are using the name of God. How do you use this name? Do you say, I am sick? Many of you know that I have been diagnosed with leukemia. And I generally start out my talks by saying, I am well. I am perfect health. I am that. I am. That is my affirmation. That is how I live. That is how I breathe. That is how I believe. Now, in the book of Joel, there's a line that says, let the weak man say, I am strong. Now, one of the things that I want to leave you with here in the time that I have with you today is for you to become conscious of how you use this term, I am. I have a CD, along with my friend James Twyman, that is, what they did with this is, it comes from the Moses Code, which is a book I encourage you to look at, by James Twyman. And what they did is they took the sound in Hebrew of the letters that mean I am that I am. Supposedly this is what God said to Moses. And they have associated the sound with what those letters meant back 1,300 years before the birth of Christ, or 3,300 years ago, and come up with the sound. The sound is a meditation that I do every day. And what I recommend that you do, you want this, don't you? Oh, you have it? Oh, you have it. Great. All right, you got it. So what I encourage you to do in terms of manifesting, before I get into the principles, is to take out a piece of paper sometime when you're at home, and it sounds like a silly thing to do, but I want you to do it. And I want you to write at the top of that page the word that, T-H-A-T, that, okay? And under that heading, whatever it is that you would like to attract or manifest into your life, I would like you to just write that down, all right? So if it's a job that you want, if it's a relationship that you want, if it's a healing that you want, if it's abundance that you want to attract into your life, whatever it is, just place it underneath that. And come to a place in your life where it is spoken about in the book of Romans, in the New Testament. He calls those things which do not exist as though they did. You must be able to get to this place in your life where you don't use the evidence of your senses, what your eyes tell you, what your ears tell you, what your stomach tells you, what you see written down, what the internet tells you. You want to be able to be in a place where you are living from the end as if what you would like to manifest is already there. To make a future dream a present fact, you must assume the feeling of that wish as already being fulfilled. And the sounds that you will hear on track 2 and 3 of this meditation are the exact sounds of what those words were spoken back there 3,300 years ago. All I can say to you is that so many incredible miracles have manifested into my life since I began practicing this meditation. Who did I promise this to? Somebody? Yeah, there. Okay, stand up. Come on up. This is a gift to you. There you are. Enjoy it. God bless you. Yeah. So, this arrived in my home, about a year before I started writing Wishes Fulfilled. And it's called the I Am Discourses. The I Am Discourses are, I think, one of the great spiritual texts on the planet today. You can pick it up, especially Volume 3. It's published by the Saint Germain Press. Saint Germain is, I believe, because I'm a student of Yogananda, and Sri Yukteswar, his teacher, who was born on the same day I was in only 1855 instead of 1940, like me. And they speak about this saint that is capable, who always keeps a young body. His name is Babaji. How many have heard the name Babaji? Yeah, this is an audience. I don't have to ask that. Saint Germain is Babaji, in my opinion. This is someone who shows up in a young body. And when you read Ascended Masters Training, The Unveiled Mysteries, The Magic Presence, and the I Am Discourses, which I have read all of them and studied them before I actually channeled Wishes Fulfilled. But let me just share with you just something here at the very beginning of it. This I can do without glasses. Life, in all its activities, everywhere manifest, is God in action. Remember what I said earlier, the life in your body is weightless, and it is God. It is what you originated from, it is what you will return to. It is where my mom is right now. And it is only through lack of the understanding of applied thought and feeling that mankind is constantly interrupting the pure flow of that perfect essence of life, which would, without interference, naturally express its perfection everywhere. Saint Germain has come to me. I feel as if I have spoken to him. And one of the things that I know from Saint Germain, from Babaji, is that it's only 1 in a million people who spend any amount of their time giving thanks to the I Am presence that is your very essence, your being. Not giving thanks for all of the bounty that you have in your life and for your health and for all of the nice things, but to be in a state of gratitude for the awareness that who you are is this divine essence, this divine being. And when I do the meditation, one of the things that I say is I am in a state of continuous gratitude for the I am presence that speaks through my mouth and through my body and through my writing and so on. It's staying in constant contact with the awareness that there is something divine that is what I am. And every time I use this word, I am. The natural tendency of life is love, peace, beauty, harmony, and opulence. This, by the way, is what Lao Tzu said as well. For life cares not who uses it, but is constantly surging to pour more of its perfection into manifestation, always with that lifting process which is ever inherent within itself. I am is the activity of that life. How strange it is that students with sincere interest do not seem to get the true meaning of those two words. When you say and feel, I am, you release the spring of eternal, everlasting life to flow on its way unmolested. In other words, you open wide the door of its natural flow. When you say, I am not, you shut the door in the face of this mighty energy. I often tell my audiences, God didn't say when Moses asked, what is your name and who shall I say sent me? He didn't say, my name is I hope things work out for you. He said, my name is I am that I am. That meaning, when he says I am that, that was Nisargadatta's great autobiography, or biography, and a book that I have studied for 30 years now. And he was known as the I am guru in India. And these two words, I am, have so much power within them. I am is the full activity of God. Having placed before you so often the truth of God in action, I wish you to understand its first expression in individualization, in you, all right? The first expression of every individual everywhere in the universe, either spoken word, silent thought, or feeling, is I am, recognizing its own conquering divinity. The student, endeavoring to understand and apply these mighty yet simple laws, must stand guard more strictly over his thoughts and expression in word or otherwise. For every time you say, I am not, I cannot, I have not, you are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, throttling that great presence within you. So, could God say, I am depressed? Could God say, I am sad? Could God say, I am unhappy? I am miserable? Not possible. And every time you say that, you blaspheme. Because when you use the words I am, you are in union, you are in yoga with God. So when I do my yoga practice, and there's certain of these postures and asanas that I have a little more difficulty with others, especially balancing ones and so on. Before I start the asana, my inner meditation is, I am well balanced. I am perfect balance. I can do this. I am perfect balance. And as I do this, I begin to see that I am speaking to this body. And what is this body? It is nothing more than something temporary that is always changing, so it's not even real. Now, there's a book that I brought here with me. And if you don't buy anything here, and I don't care if you do, I didn't even bring them. Somebody else brought them. So, but there's a book here that I would really love you to read. And if you haven't read it, I was blessed to be able to give this to my mom to read about 6 months before she passed on. And it just brought a sense of peace to her. The book is called Dying to Be Me, My Journey from Cancer to Near Death to True Healing, by Anita Moorjani. I wrote the foreword to this book. Mira,
this love of mine right here with the glasses on, who just did a past life regression, who did a past life regression with me that's in Wishes Fulfilled, which completely turned my life around in so many ways, brought something off the internet to me about this woman. She was wheeled into a hospital in 2005. Her weight was down to about 82 pounds. She had lymphoma throughout her entire body. She had tumors the size of lemons, over 24 of them, throughout her entire body. She was in a coma. She had tubes coming out of her and wires and so on. And her husband was there, and her mother was there, and they were there to just say her last rites. This was to be her last night on earth after 5 years of the steady growth of lymphoma. While in this coma, she had what is called an NDE, a near-death experience. And in this near-death experience, she came into contact first with her father, who had passed away 10 years before, and then she had an opportunity to have a vision about what her life could be. And she saw her medical records there, which indicated that she was to die tonight. And she also saw them change right before her eyes, where she had no cancer. No one in the history of the world, as far as we know, has ever been at this end stage of cancer and ever survived. That's how far she was gone. If you saw the pictures of her that I have seen when she was in that state, you wouldn't think that anyone could possibly survive that. She was told that she could go back into her body and she would be healed, and she was to teach the lessons that she taught here, or she could go on. And she did not want to get it back into her body. It was just a wasted mass of flesh and bones. But for some reason, she went back in at her father's persuasion. 5 days after coming out, she opened her eyes and everyone was in shock. 5 days after that, they were trying to find, 5 days after she came out of the coma, 60% of her cancer had gone into remission. 4 weeks after she came out, she was totally out of the hospital completely. Today she lectures. She was on my public television special. Many of you may have seen it. And she's an angel on this earth. And what she learned in this near-death experience was that all we have to do is treasure our own magnificence and recognize that God is not something out there that is within us. There's nothing for us to do. There's no job for you to do. You don't have to win. You don't have to be anybody. Who in this room has cancer? Somebody does. Where? Anyone? Where are you? Come on up. I'd like to give this to you. Have you read this? Well, I'd like to give this to you as a gift. What is your name? Kelly. Kelly? This is going to change your life. I'd like you to say the words, I am well.
I am well.
I am perfect health.
I am perfect health.
God bless you. Namaste. They have them in the back. It's a must-read, especially if you have anybody who is in the position that my mom has been in for the last year or two, and or even has any kind of illness at all. Or as when I talked to Reed about publishing this book, I said the potential audience for this is anyone who is ever going to die or knows anybody that is. And it's one of the most freeing, peaceful experiences to know that you're not here to accomplish anything. You're not here to be better than anybody else. You're not here to win. All you have to do is just love yourself. I mean, truly love, how magnificent you are. And that's what I meant when Saint Germain spoke to me and said, it's all you have to do is spend 15 minutes being in a state of appreciation for the I am presence that you are. Now, one of the things that the I am discourses taught that I was having trouble with this whole idea of manifesting is written on page 318. And I'd like to give this to you as we get ready to close. The student should constantly look within his human self and see what habits or creations are there that need to be plucked out and disposed of. For only by refusing to any longer allow habits of judging, condemning, and criticizing to exist can he be free. Are you hearing this? The true activity of the student is only to perfect his own world, and he cannot do it as long as he sees imperfection in the world of any of God's children. That includes the person who opened fire in Aurora. That includes Osama bin Laden. That includes Adolf Hitler. Any judgments that we have of judgment, criticism, and condemnation. And I wanted to manifest something so bad for such a long period of time, but the person that was involved in it, I kept having this sense of judgment toward this person. And it wasn't until I was able to say, I accept you for what you are. It's what led me to my father's grave in 1974. And I stood there after being sent there by a series of just absolutely impossible coincidences. I stood there on his grave after being filled with rage and hatred and anger and bitterness towards this man who would walk out on my mother and her 3 young boys. I was the youngest. And I finally found out about his death, that he had been dead 10 years, but I went to his grave in 1974 on August the 30th. And as I walked away from his grave, because I really went there to piss on his grave, I was so just filled with rage. And as I walked back to the rent-a-car, something called me back, and I went and stood there looking at this plate on the ground that said Melvin Lyle Dyer, 1914 to 1964. And something came over me. In fact, we've made a film about it, another film called My Greatest Teacher. And I was able to say to my father, from this moment on, I send you love. Who am I to judge you and condemn you? You did what you knew how to do, given the conditions of your life. And I accept you for it. Mark Twain once said that forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. On the heel that has crushed it. Enjoy it. My greatest teacher. Who was my greatest teacher? After that, my entire life changed. I stopped drinking. I started exercising. My writing shifted. I went back to New York. I was professor at St. John's University in New York City. I took 2 weeks to go down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, checked into the Spindrift Motel, and wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones in 14 days. 14 days. Today, there's close to 100 million copies in 47 languages around the world. And everything in my life after that shifted. My diet changed, my habits changed, everything turned around because I got the rage out of me. Because in order to attract the elements that are going to bring you the ability to manifest into your life what you want, remember how I opened this program. We do not manifest what we want. That comes from a place of missing. We manifest what we are. The angels who will guide you throughout your life will only be there for you when they recognize themselves in you. And they cannot recognize themselves in you and guide you when you are filled with hatred, anger, judgment, condemnation, bitterness, fear, anxiety, stress. You have to let all of that go and be love. Be in this place of perfect divine love. Love for everything and everyone on our planet. That's self-actualization at work. And the principles for bringing this about into your life are the last 5 chapters of Wishes Fulfilled. But basically, what it says is, the greatest gift that you've ever been given is the gift of your imagination. Your imagination is yours to be able to do anything you want with. You can place any thought in there with the awareness of I am. There's a very famous poem about that moment of Moses speaking to God. It says, earth's crammed with heaven, and every burning bush afire with God. And those who truly know take off their sandals, while the rest sit round it and pick blackberries. It's your call. It's your call. So your imagination is the greatest gift that you've been given. And you can put anything in there. No one can tell you what can be there or what can't be there. Einstein said, imagination is greater than knowledge. And he said, if you want your children to have a great imagination, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be even smarter, read them more fairy tales. That's why I've written 5 children's books with that very idea in mind. The second thing is that you have to learn to live from the end. Whatever you have placed into your imagination, you have to act as if it already were your reality, independent of what anything or anyone else says. When I was told that I had this diagnosis of leukemia, I can't tell you how many people sent me condolence letters and sent me information about this disease and how it was incurable, and unfortunately this. And fortunately, I was given by my children a wonderful gift. It's called an iPad. And it's got this wonderful feature in it. It's called Delete. And then there's another feature of it. It's called Trash, which is really great. I'd like to have a button like that on me at any time, so that anytime anybody brings any information to you, you just push the trash button. It even makes a little sound. It goes, whoop, hit delete, and it's gone. I had this little scar that you see right here on the right side of my face. There was a skin cancer thing there, and I was going to the dermatologist, and they were going to cut this thing out. And I had a woman stop me, and she said, that's really bad. I said, what? It's just a little red mark here, and they're going to just cut it out, and it'll be fine. She said, no. She said, my girlfriend's husband, he had that. They had to cut his penis off. I said, just got a little red mark on my chin, and I couldn't possibly. Trash, right? You want to be very careful, because there's always people out there who are willing to send you messages about how terrible something is going to be. The third of these principles is the principle of, I call it, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must be able to feel it, because every time that you feel something within your body, you give an instruction to your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is the part of you where you do all of your living. You want to redo your subconscious mind. Now, I jotted down for the last principle. I have 5 minutes left. And it's this is from the book of Job. Now, tonight, I'm going to give you guys such a gift. Tonight, and every night for the rest of your life, I want you to take the last 5 minutes before you go off to sleep and realize that you are about to program your subconscious mind. All right? Your subconscious mind is most at home when you are unconscious, when you are asleep. If you spend the last 5 minutes of your day, which so many people do, reviewing all of the things that you don't like, and all the things that didn't work out, and how terrible you feel, and who abused you, and who was mean to you, and who said this, and they did this, and you're constantly doing this kind of thing with your mind, then you are programming your subconscious mind that when you awaken, because you're now about to marinate for the next 8 hours in your subconscious mind. And then when you awaken, you will rejoin the universal subconscious mind, the mind of God, from which we all originated. We're all just individualized personal expressions of that one thing that we call the Tao, or God, or divine mind, or soul, or spirit. But the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So you want to be real careful about how you program your subconscious mind. This is from the book of Job. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction. Job 33, 15 and 16. When you are slumbering on your bed, he opens your ears and seals your instruction. What you place into your subconscious mind as you are about to go into this deep slumber is all dependent upon what you do the last 3 or 4 or 5 minutes before you go off to sleep. You want to place into your imagination whatever you have placed into the I am that I spoke about earlier. I am well. I am content. I am peaceful. I am happy. I am prosperous. I am abundant. I am God. I am God. I am God. Because at the basic core, each and every one of us are just that. Okay, so we just have a couple of minutes left. I want to do just it's like if you just close your eyes and just listen to this meditation. It's from the book 3 Magic Words. Here's what I'd like you to say to yourself at night. I know that I am pure spirit, that I always have been, and that I always will be. There is inside me a place of confidence and quietness and security where all things are known and understood. This is the universal mind, God, of which I am a part, and which responds to me as I ask of it. This universal mind knows the answer to all of my problems. And even now, the answers are speeding their way to me. I needn't struggle for them. I needn't worry or strive for them. When the time comes, the answers will be there. I give my problems to the great mind of God. I let go of them, confident that the correct answers will return to me when they are needed. Through the great law of attraction, everything in life that I need for my work and fulfillment will come to me. It is not necessary that I strain about this. Only believe. For in the strength of my belief, my faith will make it so. I see the hand of divine intelligence all about me, in the flower, the tree, the brook, the meadow. I know that the intelligence that created all these things is in me and around me, and that I can call upon it for my slightest need. I know that my body is a manifestation of pure spirit, and that spirit is perfect. Therefore, my body is perfect also. I enjoy life, for each day brings a constant demonstration of the power and wonder of the universe and myself. I am confident, I am serene, I am sure. No matter what obstacle or undesirable circumstance crosses my path, I refuse to accept it, for it is nothing but illusion. There can be no obstacle or undesirable circumstance to the mind of God, which is in me, around me, and serves me now. This is the great lesson. Know this within you. When Herman Melville was writing Moby Dick, he wasn't writing about a man looking for a whale. He was writing about a man, Ahab, trying to find his higher self. He said these words, "For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all of the horrors of the half-lived life. In every moment of your life as you leave here today, you have this choice. You can either be a host to God or a hostage to your ego. It's your call. Thank you. God bless you. Namaste. Thank you.
No matter what anybody says to you here, no matter what kind of anger comes directed towards you, no matter how much hate you may encounter showing up in your life, there are no justified resentments. Meaning that if you carry around resentment inside of you about anything or about anyone, and I'm talking about the person that you lent money to and hasn't paid you back, I'm talking about the person in your life that you feel was abusive in your life, I'm talking about the person who walked out on you and left you for somebody else, I'm talking about all of the things that you have justified in your heart and in your life that you have the right to be resentful about. And I'm suggesting to you that those resentments will always end up harming you and creating in you a sense of despair. I've often said that no one ever dies from a snake bite. The snake bite will never kill you. You cannot be unbitten. Once you're bitten, you're bitten. But it's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite that will end up destroying you. So now you have to take a look at all of the resentments that you may have in your life. And I'd like to suggest to you that I think there is a wonderful metaphor for this that I have created in my life for how to make this work. And I think that Regis Philbin is the one who's responsible for it, all right? My buddy Regis. There's a show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that has been popular all over the world. I'm in South Africa, it comes on, all right? I was in Australia, and they've got their own Australian version. And in Greece, they have the Greek edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And basically, this show has two levels that you have to get to. Now, the first level is the $1,000 level. And at the $1,000 level, you basically have to answer a question like, on your hand, you have some digits. Those digits on your hand are called your feet, your nose, your ears, your fingers. And everybody who ever goes on the show has this horrible dread that they're going to go out on one of those questions, right? So basically, in order to get to the $1,000 level, all you have to do is answer 5 pretty simple questions in order to get to the $1,000 level. Now, on this program, the $1,000 level for you in this metaphor means that you will leave with something if you get this. At least get this. This is the $1,000 level. You must send blame out of your life for any conditions of your life. Blame has to go. All right? Now, blame means if you're sitting there with a disease, you say, without guilt, it's mine, I take responsibility for it. This means that if you have been through any tough circumstances in your life, this means if you have a minimal amount of financial security in your life, this means if your children don't get along with you, this means that if your neighbors are taking up a petition to get you out of the neighborhood, whatever it might be that's going on in your life, you name it, and everybody across this great country and across this world has a series of these things that you're willing to say, I am here because of the choices that I have made right now. I'm willing to say that. Even though it's difficult, and we know it's really not your fault. We know really there's a lot of people out there who are really bad, all right? But you're willing to say no blame. That's the first level, all right? That's where you understand no justified resentment. And then on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show, there is what is called the $32,000 level. And the $32,000 level is not only an opportunity for you to walk away with a sizable amount of goodies, which you can walk away from tonight in this program, but it also is the door opener to multi-wealth. But you got to get to this in order to have an opportunity to move into these transcendent levels, all right? Millionaire spiritual status, all right? You got to get through these next 5 questions. And this $32,000 question, or level rather, comes to this. It came to me from a quotation that I used in the writing of A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. I read a book that was written a couple of thousand years ago by Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras, the aphorisms of Patanjali. And one of those sutras, one of those aphorisms, observations that this brilliant man made almost 2,000 years ago was this. He said, if you become steadfast in your abstentions of thoughts of harm directed towards others, all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in your presence. Now, this translates to blame, pretty basic. No more blame. I'm just not going to assign responsibility to other people for where I am, because now I have an opportunity to get rid of it. If I think someone else caused it, then I've got to wait for somebody else to change in order for me to get rid of it, and you might wait forever for that. But if I take responsibility for it, I can do something, including move on, which might be the most important thing to do. All right? But at the higher level, when there are no justified resentments, what you are doing is what St. Francis did, Francesco. What you are doing is you are at a place where you are sending love in response to hate. You are literally saying, no matter what comes my way, I am going to be steadfast in my abstention of thoughts of harm directed toward others. I'm going to work hard at, no matter what comes my way, having it come out of me what I want to come out of me, and that is love, and that is a higher energy. And if you can get to that level, Patanjali said, all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in your presence. I have a little girl, a precious little girl. I have 6 precious girls and 2 precious sons, but I have a little girl who is almost 12. And she loves animals like no one I've ever met in my life. I mean, her whole life revolves around animals. And when we walk in the woods, butterflies avoid me, fly away from people around, and they come and they land right on her arm, and it happens all the time. All living creatures, she couldn't have a thought of harm directed towards any living creature. And Patanjali said to us, all living creatures will cease to feel fear or enmity or anger in the presence of those who can send love in response to hate. That's what I mean when I say there are no justified resentments. What I'd like to do, I'd like to share a little story here with you. It's a very tender story. It was sent to me by someone who sends me beautiful things in the mail. And I call it the Teddy story. And I'd like to read this to you, if I can do it without tearing up. And this story illustrates this as well as anything I've ever seen. There's a story many years ago of an elementary school teacher. Her name was Mrs. Thompson. As she stood in front of her 5th grade class on the very first day of school, she told the children a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and said that she loved them all the same. But that was impossible, because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he didn't play well with the other children, that his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath. Teddy could be unpleasant. It got to the point where Mrs. Thompson would actually take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen and making bold X's and then putting a big F at the top of his papers. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off until last. However, when she reviewed his file, she was in for a surprise. Teddy's first grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly, and he has good manners. He's a joy to be around." His second grade teacher wrote, "Teddy's an excellent student, well liked by his classmates. But he's troubled because his mother has a terminal illness, and life at home must be a struggle." His third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest, and his home life will soon affect him if steps aren't taken." Teddy's fourth grade teacher wrote, "Teddy's withdrawn and doesn't show up much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and sometimes he even sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her Christmas presents wrapped in beautiful ribbons and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in heavy brown paper that he got from the grocery bag. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the other presents. Some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing and a bottle that was 1/4 full of perfume. But she stifled her children's laughter when she exclaimed how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On the very day, she quit teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, and instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy. As she worked with him and his mind seemed to come alive, the more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class, and despite her lie, became one of her teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under the door from Teddy telling her that she was still the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 6 years went by before she got another note from Teddy. He then wrote that he had finished high school third in his class, and she was still the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 4 years after that, she got another letter saying that while things had been tough at times, he stayed in school and stuck with it, and would soon graduate from college with the highest of honors. He assured Mrs. Thompson that she was still the very best and favorite teacher he ever had in his whole life. Then 4 more years passed, and yet another letter came. This time he explained that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go a little further. The letter explained that she was still the best and favorite teacher he ever had, but now his name was a little longer. The letter was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. But the story doesn't end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he'd met this girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago, and he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might agree to sit in the place at the wedding that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson did, and guess what? She wore that bracelet, the one with the several rhinestones missing, and she made sure she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear, "Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference." Mrs. Thompson came with tears in her eyes and whispered back, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you." Isn't that a beautiful story? Yeah. That symbolizes there are no justified resentments. Work at reaching that $32,000 level. the place where the only thing you have to send is love, because that's what's inside. And that's the message of our greatest spiritual teachers. That's all they ever had to give away. The next principle I call don't die with your music still in you. And who better to quote than Thoreau right here in Concord when he talked about some of us hear a different drummer and we must march to the music that we hear. But all of you, everybody watching, everybody here in this beautiful parish, all of you have some music playing. And all of you have a heroic mission. There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it. And too many of us are afraid to listen to that music and march to it. You out there, I know you have a book you wanted to write. I know there's a composition you wanted to compose. I know there's a song you want to sing someplace. Maybe you want to raise horses out in Montana. Or maybe you want to open up an ice cream shop on Cape Cod. Who knows what it may be. Maybe you just want to travel and see the world. Maybe you want to go into a relationship with someone but you've been afraid to, but your heart says it's the right thing to do. All of us feel something. And in Leo Tolstoy's famous novel, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, he asks this question that would be terrifying to me. He says, as he has his accountant from Moscow lying on his deathbed, contemplating the horror of this question, what if my whole life has been wrong? I've known what my music is. It's playing right now. As I stand here in front of you with these cameras and in this place, and as I sit down and write my books and tell the world what I know are my truths, I feel always completely on purpose and fulfilled. And no time will I ever come to the end of my life and say, what if my whole life has been wrong? Whoever you are, whatever that music is, however distant it may sound, however strange, however weird others may interpret it to be, don't get to the end of your life and know that you're going to leave and not have it played yet. Don't die with your music still in you. It's the message of the greatest teachers who've ever walked among us. It's the message I give to you today as one of the principles for success and peace in your life. The next principle I call embracing silence. And embracing silence is not that I say this to you because it's so important to be quiet. What I have learned, I have a dear friend, many of you know, we've put out tapes together, we've appeared on stages all over the world together. He's like a brother to me. His name is Dr. Deepak Chopra, a medical doctor, and a dear and close friend. And whenever anything is going on in my family, if I'm having a problem with one of my children or with in my own life, and if I call him up and I'll say, Deepak, or his wife Rita, I'll say, Deepak, what do you think I should do? He always has the same answer, meditate. I'll say, yes, Deepak, I understand meditate, but I said, what do you think? He said, Wayne, go deep inside and meditate. Always meditate. I'll say, will you put Rita on? Wayne, meditate. I say, all right. And you know, I've learned a lot in meditation. But what I know most about getting quiet and getting peaceful is this, that there's only one power in the universe, and it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it soul, spirit, consciousness, God. You can call it Louise. You can call it anything that you want. But as Alan Watts said, you can't get wet from the word water. It's not what we call something that gives it its substance. And this one power, this one force that flows through everything and allows everything to be, is indivisible. You can't cut it in half. You can't divide it. It's one. It's knowing the one. And everything in your life is almost always given a division. Male, female, young, old, tall, short, black, white, good, bad, up, down. These are all dichotomies. These are all these splits that we all have in our lives. The whole physical world that we live in and are immersed in, it's always immersed in this division. I used to teach a course at St. John's University in New York, and I used to tell my students when I was trying to teach this principle, anybody who can come to class and bring with them a magnet that only has a North Pole, I'll give you an A in the course. You don't ever have to attend another class. And no matter how thin they would slice that magnet, there was always the South Pole, because the physical world is made up of dichotomies. But we have to learn to fuse the dichotomies. And in fusing the dichotomies and blending the one, that's what silence does for us. That's why embracing silence is so powerful. Because no matter how many times you cut silence in half, it's like zero. You still only get silence. In Zen, they say it's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. And it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. These words that are coming out of my mouth right now come out of the silence. And finding that silence and embracing it means that you go to the place within you that you cannot divide. Just like you can't divide the source, the one, the spirit. You can't divide that either. It's only one. So when you go into your silence and you begin to practice meditation and you begin to make this a part of your life and embrace silence, what you discover is this is where you'll come to know your source. You'll make conscious contact with your source. I can't tell you how many people that have come to me who have suffered from serious illnesses, who've been given diagnoses that it's terminal and that you can't do it, who have gone out to the wilderness and have decided that I am going to commune with nature. And the transcendentalists, Thoreau and Emerson, they believed that nature was our source and that we were all products of nature. And if you can get back to your source, if you can get back to that feeling of being with spirit, that's where healing can take place. And I've had wonderful stories of people who've told me that it was when I began to embrace that silence that I began to feel more connected to my source. Embrace silence because it's a way to come to know God, to know your source. Both are indivisible. And the only experience you can have in your daily life that even comes close to a spiritual awakening is silence. The next principle I call giving up your personal history. And I learned it from a man named Carlos Castaneda, who once said that one day, he said, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history. And just like drinking, he said, I gave it up. And that, and only that, has made all the difference in the world. You know the nice thing about giving up your personal history is that if you don't have a story, you don't have to live up to it. All of us have these bags of manure that we carry around with us called our past. And the people who have done things to us and the events and the circumstances, all of this stuff that we use and we bond to. And we bond ourselves to these wounds of our past, and we identify ourselves on the basis of these wounds. And every once in a while, we set it down, and we reach in there, and we smear it all over ourselves. And then we wonder, why does my life smell so bad? I don't understand this. When in fact, the now, this moment, merging yourself into the now, means that you may have been in a relationship. I had a woman from Holland who came over to see me, whose husband had left her after 25 years. She had 4 children. And she just had been on the verge of suicide. And she was losing weight, and she was depressed, and she was taking all kinds of drugs for it. And she was getting sicker and sicker because she just couldn't get over it. And she came to a book signing that I was doing at a bookstore down in Florida. And she said, you've got to say something to me. You've got to say something to me that will help me to get over this. And I told her this line. I said, give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. And those 25 years are something, if you want to understand how to do it, think of your past as, oh, this hat. And this is your past. Now, you can't just set this thing down over here and walk away from it and give up your personal history, because you'll always have it there to look back at. What you do is you pick up your past and you embrace it. You understand it, you accept it, as I had to go through these things that I had to go through in order for me to get to this place today, and the evidence for that is that I did. You don't need any more evidence. You did. And then you toss it. You toss it. You embrace it, and you toss it. And you merge into the now by giving up your attachment. And some of you have heard me use the metaphor of the wake. Alan Watts talked about the wake is not what drives the boat. The wake is just a trail that is left behind. That's all it is. And so is the wake of your life. And the wake doesn't make the boat go, and neither does the wake of your life, the reason why your life is going in the direction that it is. The wake is a trail that is left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that it is the cause of your suffering or your struggles or your difficulty. Give it up. Let it go. Embrace it, understand it, get help doing that if you must, and then move into the now. The next principle I call, it's from a line of Albert Einstein. He said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. In order to work at solving these things called problems in your life, you have to change your mind. It is your mind where they live. It is your mind that created them. There is where you experience them. They're all illusions. You must change your mind. Literally rewrite your agreement with reality. One of the things I had said earlier is that one of the most difficult things to do in the world is to admit that you were wrong. Admitting that you were wrong is nothing more than saying, I have been making choices with my mind that have created things in my life that are not working. And I no longer intend to continue making those choices. I was wrong. You don't have to make a declaration of it. You don't have to go out and feel guilty about it. You just simply say, it didn't work. The relationship that I was in before, I behaved in these ways. I didn't realize that it wasn't working for me. Now I do, and this is where I choose to be now. The secret of a successful relationship is, to me, understanding that you put your attention and your energy in a person on what you love rather than what you don't love. Robert Frost said it so beautifully. We love the things we love for what they are. For what they are. Not for what they ought to be, not for what they used to be, but for what they are. So when you look into the eyes of a person you're in a relationship with, whether it's your children, you catch them doing things right as much as you possibly can. That's oftentimes takes a lot of hunting, but you'll find it. And when you think that my relationship isn't working, remember, it's in my mind. What am I thinking about that person? And if I could just change my mind and put my thoughts on what I love about this person and keep them there, that makes the relationship flourish. And there are people who go through their entire relationship history with no anger, no hatred, no bitterness, and only love. The next principle is, I call it, treating yourself as if you already were what you would like to become. In other words, you get out in front of your life and you see yourself as having already what you know you'd like to have and deserve to have. My children know how to do this perfectly. I have a daughter who wanted a prom dress, and the prom dress was way outside the budget that I thought a prom dress should be. Well, I thought a prom dress shouldn't cost over $20, so I do have a problem, right? But I upped it to somewhere around $250. I don't know how much, whatever. To me, it was still more than I paid for my first house, okay? But at any rate, she called and said, Dad, this is the only prom dress I could wear. I've got to wear this prom dress. If I don't wear this prom dress, it's just on and on and on with this wonderful. You know, I saw a wonderful book about how to raise teenage daughters. The title of it is Get Out of My Life, but first drive me and Cheryl to the mall. All right, that's the actual title. It's a good book. And so I told Serena, I said, it's just beyond the budget. I've got a certain amount of money that I'm willing to put for it. And she said, but I've already seen myself wearing it. I've already tried it on. I have a picture of myself in the dress in my living room, and I've already showed it to the guy who was taking me to the prom. I mean, it was this whole thing about, and she already saw herself in it. I said, well, if you see yourself in it, then you're going to have to also see yourself as earning the difference between what I'm willing to pay. And she drew up a contract. She went onto the computer, and on the background of the computer, you know, where they have these little background things they put on, there was 500 pictures of the dress, all right? And she signed a contract and said, I'll babysit, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I will pay the difference. And she did, and she wore the dress because she understood that you treat yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become.